Proficiency-based learning has been really good for students because it helps us hold them accountable for what they're expected to learn and be able to do in our courses. And it allows us to give them really authentic ways to demonstrate that they've learned what they need to learn and that they can do what they need to be able to do to pass a class.
It's not that there was anything particularly wrong with the way students were learning, it just wasn't as clear throughout the process what students were learning and what they weren't learning.
In a traditional grading system, assignments get averaged together to come up with an overall score for the course. When that happens, everything kind of gets muddled together, and you can't tell, like, if a student gets an 80 in a class, if that 80 is because a student did really well on some things and not as well on some other things and it averaged out to an 80, or if they were consistently scoring an 80 over and over and over throughout the course of the marking period.
When you just average a series of grades together, it doesn't necessarily break out what students' strengths are and what their weaknesses are or areas that they need improvement.
There are a lot more opportunities for them and myself to go back and recheck and re-examine their understanding.
If you go to proficiency-based grading, you're more explicitly pointing out what kids are doing well in and what they're not doing well in. So I think that's an advantage for kids.
Makes me feel like I can push myself to get exceeds rather than meets. Because with numbers, it's just like, okay, well, if I get a 98, it's no different than a 97. But with the letter-based grading, then I could be like, okay, well, a meets is different than an exceeds. So I need to work differently in order to get an exceeds rather than meets, instead of like 98 to 97.
I don't have to teach history chronologically anymore because I'm working with skills, with the proficiencies. The content can be in any order I choose to have it in. And so we can do things like look at revolution as a concept and study the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Iranian Revolution all at the same time.
So it's a lot more work with students directly accessing resources and practicing thinking skills around it. And they need to be able to critically think about information that they can go and find and read at any time. So I found that I wanted to work in class, spending more time on a few concepts and then drilling down in depth by practicing all these skills about how to think like a historian.
In the old system, a student could decide not to do an assignment, and though their grade was penalized, they were still allowed to move on. Where with proficiency-based grading, students need to master everything. We're holding them to a higher standard. And I think a lot more learning goes on when we hold students to a higher standard.